Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for this special LinkedIn Live broadcast. I'm Dominic Redfern, the Global Brand and Communications Director for Diageo, and I'm delighted to be joined today by my colleagues, Ewan Andrew, our Chief Sustainability Officer and President of Diageo Global Supply and Procurement, Anand Kripalu, the Chief Executive of Diageo India, Gronya Wafer, the Global Brand Director for Guinness, Jane Karuku, the Managing Director for Kenya Breweries, and last but not least, Louise Prashad, our Global Talent Director. Now, before we start, let us set the scene if we can. This week, we're launching our new 10-year action plan, Society 2030, the Spirit of Progress, which we're determined will help us create a more inclusive and sustainable world. Let's look at a short video which explains how we're going to deliver this plan.
We are a company built by entrepreneurs and people of extraordinary character. Since Arthur Guinness signed a 9,000-year lease and John Walker and Son sent the finest whiskey from Scotland to the world, we've had ambition. The Spirit of Progress is our 10-year action plan to help create a more inclusive and sustainable world. We want to change the way the world drinks for the better by celebrating moderation and continuing to address alcohol-related harm. In the next decade, we will reach 1 billion people with messages of moderation from our brands and educate people on alcohol-related harm through our global Drink IQ platform. Our alcohol education program, Smashed, will educate over 10 million people on the dangers of underage drinking. And we will also change the attitudes towards drink driving of 5 million people. Championing inclusion and diversity is core to our purpose, and we want the diversity of our customers and consumers to be reflected in the people who shape our business. Our ambition is to achieve 50% representation of women in leadership roles, with 45% of our leaders from ethnically diverse backgrounds. We will also help support a thriving and inclusive hospitality sector, providing skills and training to 1.7 million people through Diageo Bar Academy and Learning for Life. We're also going further to preserve the natural resources on which we all depend. We will reach net zero carbon across our operations, switching our sources of direct energy to be 100% renewable. And we will reduce the carbon in our supply chain by 50%. Water is critical to life and our business, and we will lead collective action to preserve the world's water. Every drink we make will use 30% less water than it does today. And by 2026, we'll replenish more water than we use in water-stressed areas, delivering over 150 community water projects around the world. We will also make sure that 60% of our packaging will be made from recycled material, and 100% of our packaging will be widely recyclable. We will also develop innovative partnerships to help create a more circular economy, and we will help to regenerate and restore the landscapes and resources we rely on, supporting smallholder farmers with agricultural skills. We are passionate about the role our brands play in celebrating life the world over. We have a responsibility to grow our business in the right way, from grain to glass, and a responsibility to ensure our people, partners, and communities can thrive. This is how we will continue to celebrate life every day, everywhere. Society 2030. Celebrate the Spirit of Progress.
Now, Ewan, you lead both our sustainability work and are responsible for our global manufacturing and procurement operations. Can you explain why our action plan is so important to us at Diageo and which elements in particular personally matter to you?
Thanks, Tom. Look, it's great to be here on LinkedIn Live, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. It's a big day for us as we extend out our ambitions across the next decade. And Tom, you know how passionate I am about this whole agenda, so I'll do my best to pick out some personal highlights for me as I run through. Society 2030, the Spirit of Progress. When I think about it, in my view, it's important not just for Diageo. It's our 10-year action plan to help create a more inclusive and sustainable world. It's really a continuation, but with even greater ambition of what is at the heart of this business. Our brands have always played an important role and a bold role at that in society. From Arthur Guinness signing our 9,000-year lease for the St James's Gate Brewery to Johnnie Walker and the square bottle reducing waste from breakage as it's shipped around the world. We're in it for the long term, and we're committed to play a leading role in addressing the challenges ahead for communities and society more broadly. So we built this into our core strategy into three pillars. They're in the fabric of our business every day now: to promote positive drinking, to champion inclusion and diversity, and to pioneer grain to glass sustainability. It's all underpinned by doing business the right way. We want to be known and trusted by all our stakeholders and our consumers for that matter, and make the right choices as how we grow this business long into the future. It's not just corporate social responsibility. It's important for everyone to see that. It's embedded into how we do work in our business every day. We know that doing it well enables us to support our communities and have a positive impact on society, but it will also enable us to continue to thrive as a business and deliver sustainable, profitable growth. As you can see from the video that you've just had an opportunity to watch, we believe that we need to have a positive impact across all aspects of society. We can't pick and choose, which is why this plan spans from inclusion and diversity through carbon and through and on to positive drinking. We made some great progress in the last decade with delivery of our 2020 targets, which at the time we set them were industry leading. It's taken incredible engagement, effort and focus from our people and teams and our partner organisations externally, and we're incredibly proud of our results. So thank you if you've helped us on that journey so far. It's a real passion in our teams and we want to keep that excitement and momentum going. We've got a great track record of setting those ambition targets and then getting after it and going to deliver them. And the 2030 goals are no different for us. As part of our response to the United Nations Decade of Action, we know we have more to do. And that's why we've set such stretching goals for the business for the decade ahead. So let me tell you a bit more about what and why we focused on some of these areas. We want to change the way the world drinks for the better. We want to celebrate moderation and continue to address alcohol-related harm, expanding our programs that are already in place that tackle underage drinking, drink driving, and binge drinking. We believe having the most inclusive and diverse culture makes for a better business and a better world. So we'll champion inclusion and diversity across business with all of our partners and communities and really celebrate diversity and help shape a tolerant society. We're committed to preserving the natural resources on which we all depend so dearly, working together to tackle climate change, water stress, biodiversity loss, and helping to create a more sustainable world. So to our business and to lead that through the next decade, we've set ourselves 25 goals across these pillars, which are aligned to those United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. These targets will address our most material issues as an organisation and will help future-proof our business, but benefit society as a whole. We've engaged broadly on the setting of these goals, internally and externally. We know we need to set leading levels of performance, and in some cases, we'll have to have our Everest moments and drive pioneering technologies and solutions that don't exist today that will help us get to our goals in the future. We'll also need to reach out and have other people reach into us, and the setting of ambitious goals will help us and enable that to happen more readily. So Dom, you asked me at the beginning what I'm most passionate about. It's probably like asking me to pick some of my favourite children, having been working on this with the organisation over the last period, but I'll give it a go. I'd normally choose to start with something like water. I'm hugely passionate about water conservation. It's so incredibly important, but I'd say I'm going to choose, with COVID front of mind, our Learning for Life programme. Learning for Life is Diageo's business and hospitality skills programme. It was designed to support people seeking employment in the hospitality industry, but they may have faced barriers in their education or their employment and the pathway in their life and made it hard to get into employment. It started in Latin America in 2008 and has since grown across the US, Europe, Africa, and Asia. We've managed to train just under 150,000 students, and I'm delighted that we're committing to another 200,000 at least over the next decade. I've personally been a volunteer, a mentor of some people in the programs in my time in Latin America, and bringing that back across into Scotland too for the last few years. And there's been some brilliant careers that have blossomed. And in some cases, I've seen some of those graduates go on and compete in our world-class bartender competition, or even open up their own bars. And I've been lucky enough to have my pint of Guinness served by one of my ex-mentees in the program. As we look at the impact of COVID-19 on this industry and on hospitality, that increasing number of unemployment rate and the risks ahead, we're really going to have to support this sector. So I think our Learning for Life program has been brilliantly able to move to online, and that just gives us a chance to have an even bigger impact with the scale of impact you can have with digital over face-to-face. So I'm passionate about that, Dom. A few other areas as we look at the Spirit of Progress ambitions, and it stretches out into, I guess, our customers, our suppliers, the NGOs and government agencies that we work with around the world. I'd say we're looking to accelerate our work in lower carbon world to become more sustainable by design. And if we look at that, in many cases, the technology, as I said, isn't there yet, or it's subscale. And we're going to have to partner differently to establish it. So the first half of the challenge is focused on working on improvement, on things that we can see today. But the second half is really about that innovation gap and requires much more partnership in the type of consortiums that are led and create real breakthroughs. And I think, you know, our paper bottle with Johnny Walker and the setup of Pulpex Limited with the consortium approach we've got with Unilever and PepsiCo, you know, those consortiums really combine the power of our collective research capabilities, our resources, our ability to collectively shift consumer habits as well. And I think our experiences with that have helped to get me passionate, excited about, you know, launching our new Diageo Sustainable Solutions today as well, which is non-equity based funding, where we'll have the opportunity to support, you know, emerging new startup businesses or established technologies that need investment to create breakthrough technologies that, as I say, are for society and not just for us. If I look at the positive drinking work as another area, I think as we make those breakthroughs, we're aspiring to change attitudes, ongoing attitudes. And we need to see partnerships like the ones we've had with Collingwood International Learning, and educators right across the world partner with us to tackle that underage drinking, and you know, partners like Unitar who've worked so brilliantly with us on tackling drink driving too. And then lastly for me, Dom, we wouldn't have achieved our goals on water today, where we've nearly a 50% reduced use of water to create our products as we've grown, without the partnership with WaterAid. And I'm really, you know, passionate about how we take that forward across the globe. We've done it brilliantly over the last decade, and we've more impact to have as we move forward. And just a thanks to any local expert organisations that are on the call today and listening, who've helped us deliver the programme. So organisations like CARE International as well. We'll not make this difference if we don't think about the future and we don't partner brilliantly. And people, we really want you to reach into us and take us on the journey with you, as well as us reaching out. So with that, Dom, I'm going to hand back to you. I'm super excited about the ripples that are going to turn into waves with this Spirit of Progress approach, and excited for the future.
Thank you, Ewan. Thank you very much. Now, Anand, you lead our business in India, one of our most vibrant markets, and also at the forefront of a lot of our sustainability work and our broader society agenda. Talk to us a little bit about the context in India and the progress that you're making there.
Sure. Thank you, Dom, and hello, everyone. So before we talk about our 2030 ambition, I just wanted to take a few moments to lay out the context of our business in India. We have a complex supply network of 48 manufacturing units spread across 29 states. 90% of our manufacturing units are in water-stressed regions. As a country ranked second from the bottom on the Global Water Quality Index, almost 600 million people suffer from high to extreme water stress. In fact, 84% of rural homes do not even have access to piped water. So as an Alcobev company, water conservation becomes critical to protecting our license to operate. Our 2020 targets were, of course, more holistic than just water. They were designed to be in line with Diageo's global ambition for 2020, aiming to help reduce the environmental impact associated with water, but also energy and non-recyclable waste. Through our team's efforts, Diageo India achieved its 2020 sustainability targets 1 year ahead of our commitment. We achieved a 54% reduction in water usage since the year 2007, with a 30% improvement over the last 5 years. And we've reduced greenhouse gas emissions by 79% in absolute terms. So staying with greenhouse gases, the improvement was achieved by addressing the use of fossil fuels through converting our boilers to biofuel, operating steam turbines to meet in-house electricity needs, and the increased use of solar energy. Looking ahead, we aim to focus on the complete elimination of fossil fuels to become a 100% renewable energy market by 2023 and become carbon neutral by 2025. So going back to water, over the last decade, apart from enhancing water efficiency in our plants, we've also worked on restoring water in the communities within which we operate. Some of our water replenishment actions include creating drainage systems to channelize wastewater for underground recharge, or indeed renovating ponds to increase water holding capacity. A unique water replenishment effort has been the creation of water ATMs, like the money ATMs, which enable people to buy clean, low-cost drinking water. This is typically provided by a solar-powered borehole alongside a treatment plant. Importantly, this is not just about water, but also about empowering women. We have trained 557 women entrepreneurs so that they can maintain and run these water ATM facilities, increasing their incomes while providing clean water to the community. Our ambition is to become water positive by 2026, and this will be achieved through our continued focus on water conservation in our operations, supplemented by accelerated water replenishment of 1 million cubic meters to our communities. And finally, a few words on helping to create a circular economy. Today, 99% of our packaging material is recyclable. We have also ensured that almost half of our overall packaging is made from recycled materials. By 2030, we aim to have 100% of our packaging made from recycled content. In the decade ahead, we would also like to establish a circular supply chain by setting up a mechanism to collect back consumer-based plastic waste. Our aim is to collect and recycle around 25,000 metric tons of plastic, which would otherwise have ended up in a landfill. With that, it's back to you, Dom.
Thank you, Anand. Now, one of our most important brands, and certainly one of my favorites, is Guinness. And I'm delighted that Gráinne Wafer, the Global Brand Director for Guinness, is with us today. Gráinne, could you just explain how Society 2030, the Spirit of Progress, really comes to life through this very special brand?
Absolutely, Dom, thank you. I mean, Guinness has always been a brand that recognised the role it plays in society and really supported the communities around it. And that comes from a long philanthropic legacy dating from Arthur Guinness and his descendants, providing social housing, for example, in Dublin, making sure that those who were living in poor conditions had access to bathing and washing facilities. and more recently through initiatives like the Arthur Guinness Fund, which supported social entrepreneurs in driving positive societal change. So it really is integral to the brand's DNA, our core of power, goodness, and communion, the values we talk about on the brand, and also core to our brand strategy. So we're really determined to build on that legacy that we're so incredibly proud of and really demonstrate our commitment to the wider world. So as such an iconic brand, Guinness really has a responsibility to its consumers to ensure that we promote moderation and also reduce harm. And that's true across all of our brands, which have committed to reaching more than 1 billion consumers with messages of moderation across the world. And I think that Guinness has actually been leading the way in this. So I'm going to share a little bit of details about a campaign we run, because whilst we all love the black stuff, we know that sometimes less is more, and swapping Guinness for water or actually choosing not to drink alcohol at all should really be celebrated. Now, Guinness has also been really famous for its advertising over the last generations. And we know that when we apply the same levels of creative flair and magic to the challenge of encouraging responsible drinking, that we can make a real impact that creates behavior change. So a few years ago, we launched a tongue-in-cheek ad campaign for a completely made up product, Guinness Clear. Now, Guinness Clear, to give it away, is 100% H2O. And this campaign really aimed to make ordering water an active and positive choice to be celebrated. So let's play the ad. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. After seeing the campaign, 78% of people in GB and 73% of those in Ireland agreed that rugby is better for everyone when you moderate your drinking. And 82% of rugby fans actually believed that this campaign made it acceptable to drink water in a pub, which was a real barrier we had identified in advance. We actually went on to win gold at Cannes Advertising Festival in recognition of the creativity and effectiveness of the campaign. So we really believe that that's a good example of how we can apply our creativity and our brand strategies to promote moderation. Beyond responsible drinking, there are other areas that we're also equally passionate about, where we can make a difference on societal issues. And that's a topic that I personally care very deeply about. We really believe that our brands can shape culture, and therefore we have a responsibility to use our influence, but also our marketing spend to support progressive voices, to challenge stereotypes in our advertising, to celebrate diversity, to create more diversity in our industry, and also help shape a more tolerant society. So across all of our brands, we've committed as a business to measure and improve our impact. And I really believe the actions that we're taking will ensure that all of our brands are contributing to that ambition of a more progressive and inclusive culture. All of our brands across all of our markets now use a progressive portrayal framework, which is designed to really make sure that the advertising content we're developing doesn't fall into our unconscious bias. And we're making very deliberate choices to ensure that more women and ethnic minorities both appear in front of the camera, but also behind the camera. We're also working across the industry globally, like Ewan said, actually partnering together in alliances is a great way of creating substantive change. We were a founder member of the UN Women on Stereotype Alliance, and we also participate in the World Federation of Advertisers Diversity Task Force. I'm personally very proud of some of the work we've done on Guinness, which really amplifies some of those voices that don't often get heard in advertising and society today. So from our wheelchair basketball ad a good few years ago now, or the Gareth Thomas ad that told the story so powerfully of the first openly gay rugby player, our African work on football, which really tells the stories of women's participation in the game and normalizes that, or even how we painted the landmark Guinness gates in the rainbow colours to mark our sponsorship of the LGBTQ rugby tournament, the Union Cup, and that created a huge wave digitally and across the world. So all of those, I think, are examples of how our brands in Diageo can put the spotlight and put the creative flair on underrepresented sections of society and tell really powerful stories that inspire us all. So before I hand back to Dom, I'm going to leave you with one of our most recent ads that tells the story of a really remarkable group of women who challenged convention back in 1980s Japan to form a formidable rugby team. If we can play the ad, please.
Thank you, Gronya, and brilliant work there. It's great to see Guinness leading the way. Now, Jane, you lead our business in Kenya, and I know that society and all of our work across this plan is very close to your heart. Can you explain how these different pillars come to life in Kenya?
Yeah, thank you, Dom. I think the Diageo refreshed performance ambition is really exciting for us. It calls out, like Kewan said, positive drinking, inclusion and diversity, and grain to glass sustainability. And this is core to what we have been doing as a business because it underpins to be the most trusted and respected and also the best performing. We've made incredible progress across these initiatives, growing value together. And as a business, we are working on this agenda across the total or entire value chain, starting from the leadership, our employees, our partners, either as suppliers, trade, or even the government in some cases, and farmers, but more importantly, our consumers. We are excited that the 2030 strategy it will bring a lot of transformation that we all need across the world, and also very many opportunities for us to share our business and our big brands and our employees' passion in driving the agenda. So therefore, our goal as a business is to create a lot of shared value across the chain. And we are doing this through improving our operations, positioning ourselves and our business and our communities as working together in partnership to deliver a very, very innovative goal into the future. And in Kenya, we've been recognized. Recently, early this year, Kenya Private Sector Alliance recognized us as one of the companies that really had best practices and very many innovative ways in dealing with the SDG goals implementation. In fact, we were given an award for being on track in delivering 13 out of the 17 SDGs, and we are very proud of this. The same year also, we've been awarded by Equilip, a Danish research firm that recognized EABL as a high-performing business, which is linked to the diversity or gender agenda that they have in the business. Again, we are very, very proud of this. On energy or environmental management, the same year we won overall winner of the most efficient in terms of energy consumption in the country. This was based across all the entire country with many manufacturing firms who participated. We also got other awards like energy, electrical savings in large consumer segment, fuel savings, and energy innovation, as well as the best team in managing energy. We were also not left behind with our vocational training agenda. So we ran a project called Heshima, which trains young people, women and guys, in terms of how to be more entrepreneurial and and vocational skills for them. And we got this award from the Global Careers Award. So I think when I look at our business, we are quite excited. And I would say that the total business is up to the lowest level, is engaged on the sustainability agenda. And we do this because we organize ourselves in cross-functional teams. And these cross-functional teams take an initiative across the entire chain from grain to glass. And we have many examples of how well we've done. I mean, for carbon, we've taken objectives that by 2030, we are really going to make sure that we are green by switching to to energy that is all renewable within our manufacturing and transport facilities. We want to reduce our carbon emissions by 95% through use of biomass. And we also want to leverage solar. The last thing we are doing in this agenda is that our indirect carbon emissions, we would like to reduce we've already reduced by 50%, and we are going to reduce the rest 50% by 2030. On water, and speaking on water, there's a heavy downpour, so I hope you can hear me well. We treat on a daily basis 7 million liters of water from our factory, and we ensure that this water is fit to be released into the environment. And from a tree planting perspective, we are involved in the country and we are co-chairing the planting of 2 billion trees by 2022. The Kenya government has an ambition of getting back its forest cover to 10%. And we are co-chairing that agenda. And we are hoping that in one day we'll win the Guinness World Record in planting the most number of trees per day ever planted. From a lobby perspective as well, we're trying to convince the government to bring back the tree planting day, where the whole nation, our employees and other corporates and other coalition of the willing, where we'll all plant trees on this day. And there will be a lot of stakeholder and government and a lot of awareness from media to make sure that we are all driving up to the school child level or up to the household level, the planting of trees importance, which I think over time we've lost. On inclusion and diversity, we are quite excited on an agenda we started where we are, from a farming community perspective, we brought in 40 disabled persons. They have a disability of one form or another to be part of our farming community. And we are incredibly happy with this. And we are looking to scale this up in the coming year to make sure that we have more people involved, more people with challenges involved in farming. Internally across the chain, we are also auditing our processes, including employees and anything that we do as a business to make sure that we are bringing on board and we are being more inclusive to people with disability. But there are so many, there's another thing I want to talk about, which is on positive drinking. I think we are very proud as a business because we've signed on an agreement with Kenya government or the National Transport Safety Authority to include the module of positive drinking in all driving schools. This implies that if you want to get a license or if you want to renew your license, you'll have to go back and learn how to enjoy our nice brands responsibly. And lastly, Senator Keg, our very big beer brand, is very much across the total value chain, end to end, because of the farmers it supports, and it is driving safe and affordable alcohol drink, and it helps people from not going to take down by the river drinks or illicit, what we refer to as illicit. It also brings a lot of people to the economic value chain who ordinarily would not have been. That means the farmers or even the trade, the little outlets that sell this brand. So in conclusion, in Kenya, we're very excited about this agenda. We're involved as a total community, partners, employees, as well as all our suppliers and farmers, and indeed in some cases, the government. So back to you, Dom. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane. It's great to hear all of the work that's going on in Kenya. Now, in a few minutes, we're going to open up into a question section. So if you have questions for any of the panel, then please put them in the comment section on the site. Now, inclusion and diversity is at the core of our purpose at Diageo, and it's fundamental to our performance. Louise, you're responsible for our global talent agenda and also for driving our work on inclusion and diversity forward. Where are we today, and what is the level of ambition that we have?
Great, thanks, Dom. Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud of the progress that we've made over the last decade to really make Diageo a standout company for how we value inclusion and diversity at the heart of our business. But we're a restless and ambitious company, and we know there is more that we can do inside our organization and contributing to an even more inclusive and tolerant society. As you said, Dom, it starts with our purpose, which is celebrating life every day, everywhere. And intrinsically, that means celebrating each unique and individual life. So that means our focus expands from gender to ethnicity, disability, as we heard Jane speaking about, age, sexual orientation, education, and diversity of background. Not only do we think it's the right thing to do to champion inclusion and diversity, we know that it gives us access to the very best talent and that it has fueled growth and innovation right across our business, and that we're helping to shape a culture where we can all be at our very best inside the organization and contribute our best to Diageo, to our consumers and our communities. So you asked, where are we today, Dom? Well, I'm proud, first of all, that 55% of our board, nearly 40% of our executive committee, and 39% of our senior leaders around the world are women. When we set out our ambitious goals on gender a decade ago, we really didn't know how we would reach them. They felt incredibly stretching, and we saw a number of barriers to making progress. As we look back now, some of the biggest areas I feel proud of where we've made progress: in manufacturing, the area that Ewan leads, we now have 37% of our leadership across our supply organization run by our most talented women. Our apprenticeship program welcomed the first female coppersmith, and one of my very favorite statistics is that 50% of our Johnny Walker blenders are women. So we've really learned to push ourselves, to challenge the myths, and to really see progress everywhere. One of the areas that we've made a lot of progress is in setting out policies that really transform the business for our people and society. And one of those areas is in our parental leave. We made changes a couple of years ago to our parental leave, whereby now across the world, regardless of gender, sexual orientation, and whether our employees became parents biologically, via surrogacy or adoption, they can each take up to 52 weeks of parental leave. Over the financial year that ended last June, we saw more than 163,000 days of parental leave taken, and the average number of days taken by new dads increased from 23 to 105. So that's really busting the myths of societal norms about gender stereotypes in the workplace and in the home. And we're also really delighted to see that many other companies followed suit and adopted similar practice. And in this way, we know we get to change wider societal views. Because we operate in over 70 countries, we already have a very diverse workforce that reflects the markets in which we operate and our global consumers. But we're deeply committed to making more progress, particularly in our ethnic representation in our leadership roles and across all levels of our business. Following some of the tragic events that we saw earlier this year that has reignited the whole world to act with more intensity on racial injustices, we engaged with our employees right across Diageo to hear their views on what more we needed to do. And we invited our 27,000 colleagues to share with us their own ethnic diversity and racial background through our confidential HR system. And we're incredibly proud that to date, 88% of our employees globally have shared that with us in order to help us set bold targets to improve representation at every level in our business. So change starts within our business, but it goes much wider than that. We heard from Grania about the role that our brands can play in really shaping a much more progressive voice in advertising. We heard from Jane about the impact that we can have through our partnerships and our suppliers. In the US, for example, we've doubled our spend with minority-owned businesses, and we want to do even more with our suppliers, distributors, and partners. And in our own business, we want to create a culture where we confront and eliminate all forms of racial bias through training, through our hiring practices, and through creating a really special culture in the business. I want to call out our business and employee resource groups, our ERGs, because they are really the heroes of our I&D agenda at Diageo. They work tirelessly on top of their jobs to promote a deeper understanding, to raise difficult conversations in our business. And that's from our women's network to our Asian and African heritage groups, our LGBT+ networks. And one of my favorite weeks in the year is when all of those groups work together to create something called Ink Week. And across Ink Week, we invite speakers from within our business and externally to share stories, to tell personal background stories about how they have dealt with adversity, and to invite more allyship across our business. This year, we weren't stopped by working on a virtual basis. We had our biggest Inc. week ever, and we talked about some of the most important topics right now, such as it's okay not to be okay, and addressing some of the mental health issues that we see right around us. So as you can see, we've done a lot over the past decade, but our ambition is commitment, and our commitment is to do even more over the next decade. So let me share with you the 4 targets that we're unveiling today. First of all, inside our own organisation, we will champion ethnic diversity with an ambition to increase representation of leaders from an ethnically diverse background by 1/3 to 45% by 2030. We will also champion gender diversity and increase our targets around women in leadership roles to achieve 50% representation in our top 550 roles in the company. And then in society, and we heard from this earlier from Ewan, I think he called it his favourite aspect today at least of our programme, which is we will provide employability and livelihoods for 200,000 people through our Learning for Life and other skills initiatives. And finally, we'll provide skills and resources to 1.5 million people through our Diageo Bar Academy. We believe in setting goals in Diageo because it drives action and it drives accountability. And there's never been a more important time in history for us to accelerate our commitment on inclusion and diversity. And I know we can count on the 27,000 people across Diageo to continue making this a personal change for each one of them and to impact the societies that we live and work with. Back to you, Dom.
Thank you, Louise. Now we're going to open up to questions, and I can see that a few have come in. And Ewan, I'll go to you for the first one if I can. We've had a few questions on which of these goals do we think are going to be the most challenging to achieve, and which are we daunted by?
I'm daunted by a few of them, Dom. I believe that's perfectly natural. If we're going to stretch ourselves and do things that are leading or pioneering, I think we should be pushing ourselves to be uncomfortable. I'd say, as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of a decade of 2 halves. I think the first half looks a bit more known, and the second half has got that big innovation gap where we know that there's going to be some technologies that comes through. What really excites me is what role we can do to just not partner as even an alcohol industry or within distilling or brewing, but actually broaden that right out into the broader society to say, how do we create outcomes together? And that's why I talked earlier about consortiums and partnership. But I'd say, as I look today, if you ask me to really call it, I think carbon is particularly stretching. And I think we've got lots of people looking to solve that together. The area that's really daunting is around about, if you think of recyclability and getting those value chains in place in all the countries that we operate around the world, so that the availability of that material for recycling is at the right level. And so I think we have a lot of work to do across many different industries and sectors together.
Thank you, Ewan. Now I'm going to turn to Anand now, if I can. And in a market like India, where the question is you're managing to balance both running a commercial business while also hitting targets and goals on sustainability, and clearly we've laid out significant ambition behind our new plan. How do we balance that? How do you manage through that in a market as big and complex as India?
Well, these two are actually complementary. It's like saying, you can't do good business unless you do it the wrong way, right? If you do it the right way, it's good for business. And actually, over time, it helps you to build a big institution rather than something that's built on a deck of cards. So I really do believe that, these things go hand in hand. And, gone are the days when you could prosper as an enterprise by exploiting the communities within which you operate and live. If you don't operate in synergy with the communities, they will banish you, right? They will not buy your products. They will not support you. And then there is no way that your business can prosper. So I clearly see these as going hand in hand.
Thank you, Anand. Now, Jane, I'll come to you next if I can. How do we measure the success and measure the progress of what we're doing on the ground? A lot of this ambition requires a lot of tracking and a lot of monitoring to really understand our performance. How do you do that in Kenya?
So I think we try to get very numerical a lot so that we can convince people that we are doing it. We also get to do impact studies, for example, with partners like McKinsey, and see what effect we are having in the entire ecosystem or within the country. And I'll give you an example. Like in positive drinking, we give ourselves a target in terms of how many SMSs, for example, should we send per day to remind drivers and our consumers that they need to be careful when they're planning to go out and have a night out of fun, and how they intend to go home. So it's making sure that your objective is really set up front, and then you cut it into chunks that people can see in terms of what you're doing, and especially for employees, so they can keep getting inspired and getting engaged in this stuff. And also sometimes to use this with our partners like government or like farmers, so that we are building a coalition of driving Diageo business within Kenya, for example. But I think what I can guarantee to you, we measure whether it's how many farmers we are recruiting, how many people we've taken through education from a positive drinking perspective, how many emissions we are getting out there, how much water we are getting out there, and we measure the water, for example, on an ongoing basis. So we keep measuring everything that we are doing, and we keep communicating.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dom.
Thank you. Now, Louise, we've got a question here for you. What kind of work do we do within Diageo to uncover unconscious bias?
Thanks, Tom. That's a great question. There's always a lot of debate about unconscious bias, and we've learned over time about, I suppose, at the very beginning when we talked about unconscious bias, we found some years back people would leave the training and somehow say to themselves, well, that's fine, everybody has unconscious bias, and there wasn't really action to then address that. So we've really learned from that unconscious bias and just becoming aware that you have it is not enough. We then have to commit individually to really addressing that bias. So now the training we launched just last Monday across Diageo is called Confronting Racial Bias. And so we think it's much more active. It's much more about knowing where bias exists and then taking action. And we also think that across the business, we all need to act as allies for change. Of course, at times we all get things wrong, and there needs to be an environment where we can learn and we can improve. But having a culture where we really acknowledge where we see things or hear things that don't include every one of our colleagues, and having a culture and a set of awareness where we can really act on that. That's how we think of unconscious bias.
Thank you, Louise. Now, Ewan, we have a question here around distilling. Now, obviously, this year we're celebrating 200 years of Johnnie Walker, one of our most special brands. And the question is really, how can we modernize distilleries that have probably been around for literally hundreds of years, so that we can hit the new targets, particularly around carbon?
Yeah, so look, Dom, we've got some outstanding craftsmen and women, whether it's coppersmiths, blenders, or whiskey specialists and distillers, and they're ingenious, right? So they're always looking at how we take that craft and apply it to make sure that our liquids are great. And I'd say that some of the breakthroughs that they're working on and they've brought through, are present. So stuff like looking at, vegetable oil residues and how we can switch fuel out of fossil fuels into alternatives. And then I think there's other more scientific approaches to how we can use yeasts that can tolerate higher heats, and therefore we don't need to heat and cool quite as much, and we can get higher efficiencies out of our processes. So they do some brilliant work. I'd say we're also investing in some of the areas that Jane touched on too. So there was a £180 million commitment that we've put into sustainable energy and water infrastructure in Africa. And that's really about across our breweries, powering them with either solar or biomass and technologies that are there. And then, look, my favorite example of where I've seen us combine the historical approach with the future is we're going to open a beautiful distillery again next year, Brora, in the northeast of Scotland. It was closed in 1819, opened in 1819, closed in 1983, and we'll reopen it next year. And we've restored that brick by brick, almost piece of mortar by mortar, to exactly the way that it was decommissioned in 1983, with one exception. And that one exception is essentially making it more sustainable for the future by putting in a 100% biomass solution that ensures that that will open up as a carbon neutral distillery from its very first liquid of distillation. So there's plenty of work still to do, but we've got some great craftsmen and women who are helping us do it.
Thank you, Ewan. It's great to hear of the plans for these different distilleries. Now, probably got time for two more questions. So I'll do one for Louise and then one to Gráinne, if I can. So Louise, it's great that Diageo is setting goals for both ethnicity and gender. What's the current representation among our leaders, and why do you see this as such an important goal?
Great, thanks, Tom. Well, from a gender perspective, we are now 39% of our leadership group is female, and as we stand today, 36% of that same leadership group are from an ethnic diverse background. So the targets that we've unveiled today is that we will increase by a third of our ethnic diversity of our leaders, so to take us to 45%. And on gender, we will get to equality across our leadership roles, so 50%. And we think making progress on both of those is really vital for us to be able to attract, retain, and develop the very best talent. And hopefully you've seen that today with the great talent we have telling the story of Diageo and the 27,000 people that sit behind all of this. It's really always about making sure we have access to the very best talent. So those are the goals that we're setting ourselves today, Dom.
Thanks, Louise. Now, Gráinne, Guinness, of course, is synonymous with pubs and with sport and with community. And the question for you is, how has Guinness been able to support the trade, the hospitality trade, through this pandemic? Has COVID had a real impact on our ability to hit the 2030 society targets that we have?
I think, Dom, like everybody, we've had to change and adapt and move quickly throughout the course of this year. But I think if anything, the one thing that we've seen across the course of the last few months is really the importance of community, the importance for looking out for each other. And as I said earlier, they are values that go right to the core of what Guinness is about. When lockdown first happened, we actually were straight out really thinking about how we could support the trade. We announced £1 million fund to help them start to put in place some of the things that they need to be able to reopen safely. And we've been tirelessly working alongside them ever since, and, you know, doing things in the community. For example, our Open Gate Brewery in Baltimore in Maryland pivoted to move from brewers to bakers, and they were actually providing bread to the local food bank. We've also had to change our marketing, I suppose, to be more focused on, for example, rugby's on at the moment. Not that I was thrilled with the Irish result, but anyway, to watching the game at home. And, you know, we're waiting to, I suppose, be ready when people are ready to go back to the trade. And people are really looking forward to that pint of Guinness. And as soon as it's safe to do so, we're supporting. The other thing I think has been amazing across the course of the last few months is the Diageo $100 million Raise the Bar Fund, which is really about supporting the recovery of the hospitality industry across the world. I mean, pubs and bars are really at the heart of every community. They bring people together, and they play, you know, such an essential role as a hub for conversation and connection. And also from an economic perspective, they sustain hundreds of millions of jobs, and like they provide a first foot on the employment ladder for so many people. So they play a really, really important role. Last week, Ireland launched a beautiful campaign under Raise the Bar, which was about showcasing the steps that the hospitality industry are taking to be safe to reopen. And I'd encourage you to look for it on LinkedIn. It's a beautiful piece of film. And when it's safe to do so, we are just delighted to be doing everything we can to help our partners in the trade, our partners in hospitality, open the doors safely and welcome people back for that much anticipated pint of Guinness.
Yes, indeed. And thank you, Gráinne. Thank you to all of the panel. Hopefully today we've been able to bring to life for you our new 10-year action plan, Society 2030, the Spirit of Progress, and really explain why it's so important to all of us at Diageo. So thanks again to all of my colleagues on the panel, and thank you to you for tuning in for this broadcast. Goodbye.